solid game by Team Liquid. First victory with Piglet. So I kind of want to jump onto that topic right away. They put Piglet on Vayne. I like that decision. Put him on someone that he can actually feel like he can make a difference.
Thank God, because he had 0 kills up until today, and they started making him the playmaker and kind of the centralized focus of the team for a carry, and I really think that's what Piglet's play style is, and I'm glad they recognized that and played to that strength as opposed to putting him in something that was a little uncomfortable for him before.
Well, I feel like it was also a convenience thing. Like, this wasn't just getting Piglet on a comfort champion, it was getting him on a comfort champion that was also the best pick at the time. Like, the champions that were locked in at the time was Sivir and Jarvan, right? Vayne, going into that, is going to do well against both those, whether you lane against a Sivir or whether Jarvan ults you, because you can then stun him against his own ult and then tumble out of there.
Yeah, well,
so it was a solid pick overall.
Caitlyn's also something that he has shown that he can play and is one of his top-tier champions, which is also great in those.
It's true.
So they wanted him to carry a little bit more, because he played Caitlyn and it wasn't that great last time.
That's true.
I mean, I just like the idea of putting him on a champion where he feels like he can make the plays. Yeah. He can make the, those game-breaking moments that you need for confidence, right? You sit on Caitlyn, it's like, how do you really ever become comfortable or rather overly confident in your ability if you're not given the opportunity to showcase that?
Yeah, you need kind of a tank wall for that and just pew pew from the back line, and Vayne rolls around the fight and makes highlight reels.
Now that being said, they pick up Vayne, right? Vayne is a champion that you need to look to punish early in the game. You cannot let Vayne scale as hard as he did in this game. So, Coast, I want to talk about how they allocated resources in this attempted lane swap and then an actual lane swap. And
yeah, they got kind of juked. So we heard Xpecial talk about it there, where he thought they wanted the 2v1, and then he's like, okay, and then we didn't show, and then we showed up for the 2v2. Sion was doing the Raptors at that time and had to TP, but he didn't TP to the bot lane. And then he started building armor, so he ended up losing that top lane a tiny bit because he's not building against Lissandra. He builds Glacial Shroud, then they lane swap it back because they weren't having a good time. But by that time, Piglet was able to back with a Vamp Scepter. Bilgewater Cutlass, even worse. Bilgewater Cutlass Dagger, and then Vayne is completely fine at that point. It's really hard to shove her out, even with hitting Sion E's and things like that. Then they started allocating Impaler there, and it was just a recipe for disaster.
Everything went wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, as Irene was saying,
I could go on forever.
To put it bluntly.
Yeah.
If you're against the Vayne Nami lane as Sivir Morg, you want to lane swap immediately, and they didn't. So there's that. And then on top of not lane swapping immediately, Sion can have a good lane against Lissandra if he itemizes magic resistance and then just starts shouting minions at her. But he built a Glacial Shroud because they're like, all right, we're going to swap back as soon as we can. And I mean, it's just a different way of saying what Irene said, but they didn't do it right.
Yeah, and I want to touch on another thing here, because the Cassiopeia into the Xerath, that is a horrible matchup for Cassiopeia. Jez's impact on this game was so low that he could have probably picked any other champion and would have been fine there. And the fact that they allocated Impaler to the bot lane for so long and it didn't work out, he ended up giving up a lot of kills there because Dominate was there to counter gank. Really, really, you need attention middle as Cassiopeia versus Xerath. You need it. You absolutely need it, because you're getting outranged, you're getting out harassed, and it's really just a terrible situation. I'll stop right there, 'cause it's really rough playing that matchup.
Yeah, she seemed a little irrelevant, especially into the late game. We saw a missed ult, and then that's it, right? Like, she's rendered pretty much useless there, especially that far into the game.
Well, yeah, I forget if it was you or Irene at some point during this game. Like, I forgot Cassiopeia was in the game. And I was like, so did Team Liquid, because she's had no impact.
She's done nothing. Yeah. So something I do want to point out, though, is that Team Liquid, they definitely played the map very well in that they were playing their map movements correctly, right? They definitely kept all their side lanes pushed so that they had waves crashing. We saw Coast look for a few fights, but they were getting punished by, Team Liquid taking turrets in the side lanes when they were unsuccessful in actually finding the engages they want. That was showcased by the Quas bot lane 1v2, actually, that we saw. And we don't have to wait till tomorrow for any LCS big plays, because at HTTR 2014 writes, Quas bot lane swag moves, no way. Hashtag top lane faker. We agree. So we're going to throw that up on your screen and watch that highlight play once again.
And the big thing about this play for me is that shows that he's very comfortable on Lissandra. If you pick up Lissandra, the Q making contact with somebody extends the range. So he's going to flash and use Chris's body to extend the range to get to Impaler.
Right there.
Boom.
Yep. And then you know, Rek'Sai comes in from the side, but he's kiting properly here, avoiding all the damage from Sion. I mean, it's stellar mechanics on top of, you know, in terms of the thought process to see the way that the fight would play out and know which skills to use when and execute properly on it.
Yeah, and one of the weirdest things with Lissandra is when you're constantly hitting your Q against minion waves and then it extends it to the back line, then you throw a Q out and you're like, whoa, that's like 400 range shorter than before. It just feels weird. So he has a really good feeling for that champion, and I think you probably have to ban that versus Quas moving forward.
Right, so we've in the past talked about how Coast is normally winning, right? They're winning moving into the later stages of the game, and then
lead.
Yeah, they didn't lose the lead this time. There's that. So, you know, is this just a product of choosing too many losing lanes? A piece of me wants to attribute it to just that, because we've seen them accumulate leads before, so it's not like it's a lack of individual skill.
Here's the thing that I'm worried about from Coast's perspective. They started the season playing good early games, but when your team consistently loses leads, sometimes that makes you second guess your decisions or just straight up do the wrong thing. So this was kind of the first we've seen of Coast losing the early game. And when that happens, maybe they're starting to lose trust in each other, because the way they played those lane swaps back and forth felt like they didn't actually have a singular idea of what to do. They had multiple ideas of what to do. Oh, actually, the lane will be fine up here, Lissandra versus Sion. Nope, we should swap it back. Nope, that was a bad idea. Instead of just making the decision confidently and going with it throughout.
Yeah, the decision-making of Coast when they're under pressure is something that needs to be called into question. But also, the champion select here. You talked about the early game. If you look at the team that Team Liquid drafted for themselves, they're pretty early game oriented.
Another really solid draft by Team Liquid.
But then if you look at Coast, this is a mid-game kind of wombo rush at you composition. Sion, Cassiopeia needs to scale. J4 is going to help them with the wombo, like all across the board. And Sivir to get in there. Like, this is a composition where they're like, okay, we keep losing late game. Let's make a late game team composition that we can end this game out when we're ahead, like kind of close it out and dive people. But they didn't get the early game lead, so they couldn't capitalize on that.
Yeah, they chose the mechanics and abilities they needed to close a lead if they had it. Unfortunately, they didn't have it here. Well, again, a great win by Team Liquid here, having their new with their new AD carry, rather. And so hopefully that kind of tempers some of the expectations and then the lack of expectations, or rather the reservations that people had with Piglet coming in AD carry. And, you know, Coast, still that kind of unknown, searching for what they need to do to come out with some victories here in the LCS. Now, we've got Winter Fox taking to the stage for our next match against Counterlogic Gaming, so keep it tuned right here. The action continues in just a bit.
A lot of people say it in a song just to say it, man, I'm not that type of guy.
Doesn't that make him that type of guy since he said it?
What do you mean?
No, it doesn't.
In comes the engaging special, knocked up, goes down right away. First blood goes to Impaler. He's running those silver bolts is on, cannot get out. Flash ult catches 2. In comes Impaler, but he's got no health at all. Bubble misses though. Dominate stuck on a turret. Tidal Wave catches 4. In goes Quas, and that's going to be 1 kill picked up. Does burn the ult. He gets nothing for it though. Ignite is on Dominate low. First kill picked up though. Quas in the front lines, tanking the turret means he's going to die soon. Pops the Zonias. Team Liquid improves to 3-2.